America, América, A New History of the New World. Written by Greg Grandin and published in April of 2025 by Penguin Press, with a snippet read by Richard Coombs. Available for checkout right now at the Alice L. Pendleton Library. Philosophy begins in wonder, Socrates said. It matures, Hegel added in terror, on the slaughter bench of history. So it was with the arrival of the Spanish in the New World. Wonder there was when Christendom realized there existed half another world, filled with rarezas, rarities, curious plants and animals, but above all, people, many more and many more different kinds than lived in all of Europe. Even before Copernicus, Europe was awakening to the idea that the Earth wasn't the center of existence, and that the universe contained, Giordano Bruno would soon reckon, innumerable suns, and infinite Earths that equally revolve around these suns. Scholars intuited a link between the celestial and earthly multitudes. There was one heavenly realm containing an incalculable number of stars. There was one earthly estate, now known to contain many more millions of people than previously imagined. The realization that the Earth was not the center of divine creation was as unsettling as the knowledge that Europe wasn't the center of the world. What did this multiplication mean for the idea of Catholic holyism? For the story of Genesis, when God at creation called into being first Adam, then Eve, who together produced a single lineage, of descendants with a shared, if gory, history. When reconciled with the Catholic premise of celestial unity, the diversity of the New World's peoples could support the ideal of equality. Time spent in the Caribbean, Mexico, and Central America convinced the Dominican priest Bartolomé de las Casas that the ancient philosophers and theologians who had argued that there existed categories of inferior humans, people born to be natural slaves, were wrong. As it turns out, Las Casas wrote, the ancients didn't know very much about the world. The Dominican would continue to cite the sages when it suited his purpose, but for him, now, truth was to be found not in Aristotle, but in America, and the most important truth was that humans everywhere were fundamentally the same. All were made in God's image. Their differences, skin color, hair texture, cultural practices, and religious beliefs, reflected the vast variety of the infinite divine. And differences in appearance had nothing to do with human essence, which for Las Casas was everywhere the same. Every Indian he had met in the New World, he said, possessed both free will and the ability to reason. That alone made them human. They could remember the past, imagine the future, estimate probabilities, and could see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. They were born, matured, grew old, and became ill, and when they died their families grieved, as humans did everywhere. When happy, they laughed. When sad, they cried. They took delight in the good and despised the bad. From this, Las Casas issued a famous declaration. Todo linaje de los hombres es uno. All humanity is one. At the same time, the New World's conquerors mocked the idea of humanity's oneness, laying the foundation for race supremacy. Spanish settlers and colonists legitimated cruel killing on an unprecedented scale, forcing the New World's inhabitants to labor in mines, fields, and waters to extract the riches of America. Gold, silver, pearls, dyes, and soon sugar and tobacco. That Europe would use to gild its empires, muster its armies, fund its wars, build its cathedrals, and pay for more voyages of conquest and enslavement. Never mind what priests like Las Casas were saying. Theologians were known to say one thing and its opposite. Indians were little better than apes put on earth to serve man. To dominate them was just. To work them to death no more a sin than to butcher a hog. The people of the New World were found. Then they were lost. Not immediately and not completely, but enough so that a group of Dominican and Franciscan priests wrote their superiors in Spain in 1517 wanting to know where they went. Where are they, O most illustrious fathers? What happened to the men and women who upon Columbus's arrival 2 decades earlier were so many that they were like leaves of grass? Demographers today aren't sure what the size of America's population was before the arrival of the Spanish. Most estimates fall between 50 and 100 million inhabitants. The Spanish couldn't say. They knew that the Indies, the name America was in use for the New World in the early 1500s, but not widely adopted until a little later, were densely populated with wildly varied peoples. They ranged from the Elysian Taino, who seemed to have lived lush and well-nourished lives on the islands of the Caribbean, to the hierarchically organized, ostentatious, and scientific Aztec and Inca empires in Mexico and Peru. Columbus thought that the island of Hispaniola, Spain's first Caribbean colony from where Hernando Cortez was soon to lead his assault on Mexico, was paradise, but a populated paradise, completely cultivated, like the countryside around Cordoba. He estimated that the island was home to over 1 million souls. Las Casas, who was 17 years old when he arrived in the Caribbean on April 15, 1502, thought that number too low. An infinity of people lived in the new lands, he later wrote. The New World was filled with people, like a hive of bees.